88% of women in the sector are experiencing microaggressions on a daily basis that's negatively impacting their experience of work. It's absolutely ridiculous that in 2025 we're still having to advocate for equitable facilities. Everybody has a role to play in developing and supporting a positive culture. Learn from your mistakes, help others learn from them too so they don't make the same ones.
We've talked a bit about getting women into the industry, but I'd like to talk about what happens once they're in a little bit more. So women's participation isn't just about the numbers, it's also about whether the industry provides an environment of inclusion and respect. So Princey shared a simple but telling example in her episode about being ignored when she asked someone to follow just some simple safety requirements or something as basic as refusing a handshake. And these small acts send a big message about whether women are respected in the workforce. So I'll just play that now.
I've had an incident where I've gone out to site, told a guy to put on his hard hat and he just went, "Don't want to talk to you." Or I've had incidents where they wouldn't shake my hand because they just, and
I've had that before.
Yeah. And it's not a mistake. They haven't just not seen me. It's quite, intentional. And, you know, like now I just laugh at those sort of incidents. But when I was younger, it affected me because I felt out of place and an outlier. Yes, there is that challenge.
So microaggressions, NAWIC has done a really great piece of work around that. And I'm very proud of how that work rolled out and what we've been able to do with that. What do you think it tells us about the culture of construction and how we can begin to shift some of those really tangible lived experiences that people have every day?
Yeah, a lot. That clip is so frustrating, isn't it? And it's so juvenile. But it is, those types of experiences are really common. So our microaggressions research that we released last year, and the Not So Little Things Affecting Women in Construction report, actually showed that 88% of women in the sector are experiencing microaggressions on a daily basis that's negatively impacting their experience of work. So it might sound like, and this is the point of the title of the report, it might sound like little things, they're micro things, but actually they have a macro impact when they all add up. And if you're facing that, multiple versions of that every day, it becomes just exhausting and tiring. And that's where we have, massive attrition. So what does it tell us? Well, it tells us that research showed that it's rife, so it's through the industry. So 41% of the microaggressions that women were experiencing were actually coming from their direct line supervisors or managers. But 38% were coming from clients. So this is not just within an organisation issue. This is an issue across the sector, across the supply chain. So for me, that tells me that we need to work more closely with our supply chain on what our expectations are. And if you want to do business with us, this is the way we expect you to behave, and not, I guess, shirking responsibility because it's a different company and we've got that subcontractor relationship. In my mind, that is irrelevant, and in the law it's irrelevant because you as a company have a duty, a positive duty, to keep all of your workers safe, and that includes when they go and deal with your clients and when they deal with your subcontractors and so on. What interestingly I found 80% of those microaggressions were happening verbally, so very much what's just been touched on then, that kind of, and sometimes it's not even words, it's reactions or comments, but also body language or ignoring someone in a conversation. It can come out in lots of different ways, and because so many of them are verbal, it's really hard for women, especially if it's just them in the room, but sometimes there's lots of other people there too and they're not doing anything. It can be really difficult, and we do find in our research there are a lot of comments around, I thought it was just me, I didn't want to be overreacting. In fact, some of the conduct that was reported through our research was so serious that it was actually against the law. Some of it was sexual harassment, but women weren't necessarily recognising it as that. They were uncomfortable, they knew it was wrong, but they weren't actually necessarily seeing it as against the law and something that action should be taken against. So it's so important to educate everyone, so men and women and non-binary people in the sector, so they know both what the expectations are, but also what their rights are and what they can do to actually enforce those rights and where to go. And the other element is most people, when we talk about sexual harassment, most women will report sexual harassment to a colleague or a friend or a family member. They very rarely will they go straight to an authority or to a formal process. So we need to be training people on being the person who receives that information.
Yep.
Because if you go to someone and say, I've just had this experience, and the person says, oh, are you sure? Really? Did that happen? Oh, but that's just John. That's just how he operates.
Even just okay, what would you like me to do about it? So it might not be that they're necessarily downplaying or justifying behaviour. They might just go, I don't know what to do with this now.
Yeah.
And that can have the same impact as trying to justify out the behaviour as well, because it's just being underprepared or underqualified for the situation, I suppose.
And I guess we expect, if we want to really stamp it out, we have to train people to know how to deal with it well.
Yes, we do.
Because at that reporting stage, it's just so critical. Underreporting is rife. We barely hear about most of the instances of poor conduct that's actually happening. And of course, that's a risk for businesses. If you don't know what's happening on the ground and the first time you hear about it is in a legal matter, it's a massive risk for your company.
Yep.
And worse than that, look at the experience of the person experiencing that. They may not be able to continue in your organisation or not continue in their career, depending on the conduct. There's such a range, and it is a slippery slope. So getting on top of it is really important. I mean, it's also a legislative requirement.
Yeah,
and I can't stress this, more for people that this is not a nice to have. I spoke to someone yesterday and they I'm not sure where their thinking was coming from, but they had in their mind that, but are you talking about safety, and that was their words, or are you talking about
like something falling on their head, safety,
like mental health and things?
Yes.
And I sat with that for a minute and tried to explore what they meant by that. They, in their head, had physical safety, wear boots, don't chop off your hand, make sure something doesn't fall on your head in one box as that's traditional safety. And then all of this other, in their mind, fluffy stuff as something separate. And I don't think they were connecting the dots. All of the things that you're talking about are safety. Women being able to go into a workplace and not be harassed and actually do their job and feel comfortable and not have to be worried about the route that they walk to get there and get home and whether they're going to, be attacked at night and things like that is all safety, just as much as someone's mental health and well-being is part of the safety equation. So we need to stop separating it out and we need to see it as a whole.
Yeah, and be better equipped for it. Because I called a manager once to explain an incident of something that happened to me when I was working very remote, like tiny plane type situation to get to where I was going. And they did that, are you okay? What would you like us to do? Do you want me to report it? And me as going, oh no, don't worry about it. I don't want to be a problem. It's all good. Just kind of brush it away. So I think the intention of the person who I was talking to was to support me by asking me what I wanted, but their obligation in that moment actually was probably to be more of a leader and do the reporting and put me on 2 planes to get back out of there. And because if I'd have called up and said, hey, I've cut my finger off, I would be out of there so fast. What to do because you can tangibly go, a finger missing from a hand's not good.
Yep.
But trying to imagine that mental impact, I think, can be a lot harder for people. And whilst they might try and say, oh, what would you like? I'll do whatever you want. When you put it back on the person who's in that situation, they go, nothing, I'm embarrassed now, leave me alone.
Well, and that manager's got a duty. Right?
Yes.
They've got a duty of care to you. They've got a duty to their organisation in terms of risk management. They've got a duty under the law generally to be actually acting when something is unsafe or harassment or discrimination has been experienced. So, yes, it's drawing it back, but giving people the tools to actually understand the impact of that. If you are the victim of poor behaviour and you go and you go in and deal with that by going and speaking to your manager and you've got to walk in on your own and say, hey, Bob, I've just experienced this, and then and they're awkward and they don't know what to say about it. That's one thing, right? Imagine if we actually had people around you that had seen or heard, or your friends or whatever it was, a bit hard in a remote environment. There's an added risk there. But say it had happened in an environment with others around, or you told someone. Imagine if those people went with you. Imagine if you rocked up to your manager's office with 5 people with you, and you're there to tell you what's happened, and they're there to support you 100%. That then has a really different approach. So what we're focusing on around our culture change program is creating this collaboration of upstanders where people actually see that their role is not just to sit by passively allowing stuff to happen or feeling like they're being supportive after the fact. It's actually stepping up and taking some responsibility and offering positive steps to eliminate that.
And I think reflecting as well, I mean, that manager, credit to them, like years and years past this incident, and he brought it up again with me and just said, I don't think I did a very good job there. What should I have done? And I said, look, in the moment, what I would have said then is exactly what I said then, because that's how I was feeling. But now, knowing what I know, what I would do if one of my juniors called up with the same situation is I would say, I'm booking you on the next flight, pack up your stuff right now. And if you'd have asked me back then, I never would have said for you to tell me that. But that's what I think you should have done with the lessons that I've now learned along the way. And he kind of sat with that a bit and went, yeah, I really probably should have done that. And I'm sorry. And I think just for people who are thinking of any situations that they might have been either on my side or my manager's side or whatever, or a bystander who has seen something, it's okay to pause and realize that you did something wrong or didn't quite have all the information to make a better choice, and acknowledging that and committing to do better the next time is actually a really good step. Like it's okay that you stuffed it up once or twice.
I love that they had the self-reflection to actually do that, and that they raised it with you. That shows me an enormous amount of growth and potential.
Yeah.
And you said it yourself, sometimes people don't have all the information to make the best choice.
Yep.
And part of what we're trying to do as an organisation is give people that right information so that we can support them to make better choices, and that manager will learn, actually, this is the expectation of me. I should have stepped up. But I love hearing stories where people are actually reflective and they do think back and go, actually, I didn't deal with that well. And they go one step further and they actually speak to you about it. That shows a huge amount of integrity.
Cycle, because I think I could have easily fallen into when this happened to me, this is what my manager did, so that's what I'll pass on. But I do think because of my involvement with NAWIC and the community and that developing over the years, the way that I approach things and my way of thinking, my behaviour changed. So they were looking at it like, oh, okay, she's actually doing that differently to how we would have done it. Is that something that can be implemented, and should it be implemented? And I think that's really positive change, but sometimes a bit hard to sort of tangibly explain to people, like sort of reflect on situations you've been in or witnessed or heard about and acknowledge where your shortcomings might have been and seek out the information to fill those in.
Yeah. There's this saying that, do the best you can until you can do better.
Yeah.
And I think this is probably one of those areas. I would make the exception that there are people who will go about their day and continue doing things in a certain way because that is how they experienced it. So, for example, let's give an apprentice a tough time because, well, I had to earn my stripes and that's how I experienced it. And I fundamentally have a massive issue with that because if your purpose in life is to go along and keep everyone going through the same level of toughness that you've had to go through, it's a pretty sad purpose, right? Why wouldn't you want to make things better for the people that come behind you? And it's that whole element of don't pull the ladder up, actually, extend it down and let's actually create. You didn't experience that, but you now know that wasn't a nice feeling. That wasn't a great experience. Let's make it different so no one else has to go through what you went through.
Cathryn Loppy, one of our couch guests, actually, I don't have that clip today, but one of her messages that she landed with us was tell others where the potholes are. Yeah. And bring them behind you so that they can avoid them. Because if everyone wastes time falling in the same pothole, we're not actually creating new pathways to go to new and exciting places. So what's the point? I think it probably just shows, like, bluntly, a real lack of emotional maturity if that's your mentality.
Yes, it does.
Sorry,
and I loved Cathryn's episode. You know, it absolutely this is where the collaboration comes in. Learn from your mistakes, help others learn from them too, so they don't make the same ones. You know, there is this. Let's not hold on to all this sort of angst and issues. If things have been hard, let's use that, because we've got such a great opportunity to build the workplaces and the experiences for people that we wanted to have, that we might not have had. So that's where I see, you know, we come together as a community within NAWIC and, you know, our membership base, our volunteer community, and we're joined by this purpose of, we know things can be better, so let's make them better. And everyone can bring different experiences, different market segments, different roles to that. But actually, I think one of the key things that really underpins what we do is we know that it can be better, and we want to join forces. And we know that we can make it better, but we know we need to join forces to be able to do that effectively.
We have information to help get in that direction, but we can't do it by ourselves. I've got 2 more clips to go, and they kind of bookend for me the way that I think about some of this safety and inclusion stuff, in terms of from microaggressions to really serious things that people probably would consider more in that traditional safety box. And I'm going to start with something Logan and Jazz raised about when you bring something up and feel a bit like, oh, am I sooking? I suppose perhaps like what I felt like when I brought it up and we said, well, what would you like us to do? And I said, oh, nothing, it's actually fine, don't worry about it. I think that's unfortunately really common.
At the start, you're like, how is someone going to take this? Are they just thinking that we're sooking? And it's not the case. It's an actual need.
So they were talking about that in the context of hygiene on site and having access to toilets and basic hygiene needs, and asking to go to a toilet while they were working out on site all day for 8 hours. And Logan and Jazz shared that they'd just stopped drinking water because they knew they weren't going to be near a toilet all day. And that hasn't been my lived experience, but I just thought, imagine that that's the choices that you're making, is I'm working in a roof or whatever it is, it's a hot day, I'm doing manual physical labour, and I can't drink because there's no toilet available to me, and I feel like I can't say anything because they'll just think I'm whinging. Like, what can we do that's more than just a tick the box exercise to sort of embed some of that thinking into sites and facilities and leaderships as their priorities?
Well, firstly, it's absolutely ridiculous that in 2025 we're still having to advocate for equitable facilities. That should just be a given. So that and it is a requirement to provide your workers with facilities. So
surprise, it's the law.
It's actually the law. So maybe we need to sort of ramp up people's understanding of that when they're planning out sites. And we have great resources like our equitable site checklist that helps organisations when they are setting up a site to think about what are the things that I might need to think about, particularly if they are a man and they haven't thought about this stuff before because it hasn't been their experience. It gives them a checklist so they don't actually have to go and speak to someone. It's pretty set, right?
We will give it to you. You don't even have to think about it. You're welcome.
You're welcome. Absolutely. But secondly, women's health and menstruation. I think they were also talking about access to period products in that episode. Women's health and menstruation are never sooking. I hadn't actually heard that term before, but that's ridiculous as well. So and there needs to be, I guess, a greater awareness of what, menstruation and also other women's health issues are. That's one of the biggest areas for growth, I think, for our sector, to really understand the workforce and the workforce needs. And at the other end, of course, understanding menopause.
Yes.
And that's education for women as well, because this is not the type of information that you naturally get when you're growing up. I'm not sure, many people's mothers or grandmothers or other women in their lives don't talk to them about it. It's sort of, that secret women's business. It's 2025. We need to move on from that. Half the population experience these, bodily functions, it's normal.
Mhm.
It's, having access to period products is as simple as, well, do you get toilet paper in the toilet when you go? So yes, I think we should have access on site for everyone. It's really as simple as that. So, but it's also, it's that issue for an individual, but it's a business issue because, if the health and well-being of your people impacts how you deliver your work and also impacts things like downtime and, is that person just going to decide, look, I need to take a day off because I can't handle this because I don't have access to basic facilities on that day? There's such a big impact.
Or does my productivity stop at 2 p.m. because I've got a raging headache because I haven't had any water?
Exactly. I mean,
you get
that
4 more good hours out of me.
The thing is, I actually spoke to someone recently and they were talking about, people were dehydrating and they weren't drinking enough. And so we did this education. We got someone to come in and talk about, health and wellness and nutrition. And I said, did you ask about the toilets on site?
Don't say that word.
and I don't think that had been a full consideration because, and in their mind, sometimes you do have women's facilities there, but they're locked or they're used as a storeroom, or there is no lock and therefore they're not safe to use, or you don't have, sanitary bins or other facilities in them, or it hasn't been emptied for eons. So it's not just the availability of them, it's also the practicality around that. And that's just so fundamental. We're construction, we build things, we can solve the problem of women's low use.
I think we can do this, guys.
We can do this.
And it's interesting because there's different scales to this conversation, like everything. Because on big commercial construction sites, no excuse to not have clean, available facilities to use for everybody. It becomes more nuanced and a little bit harder, but not that much harder to solve when you're thinking about residential construction. You're not necessarily going to have toilets on all of those sites if it's smaller. Maybe you're going into an apartment building, all of that kind of thing, who knows. But have we got some things in place that it's like, okay, well, we'll do 2 15 minutes and a half an hour break and we'll make sure we go to the local servo or whatever it is, because maybe it isn't on site and it can't practically be, fine. But that's not where the thought stops. It's like, but there's still an issue. So how are we going to solve it?
We can accommodate smoko breaks back in the day. we can accommodate, facilities breaks, and you have to build that into your schedule, right? If it's not available, you have to build that in. It's the same thing as thinking about if you've got remote staff, where are you putting them up? Where are they staying? What's the safety around that? Because we speak to women who are terrified to go on site from a safety perspective.
Yeah, we do.
And things that many men that are involved in putting them there are not even thinking about. But it goes right back to, business planning and scheduling and making sure this is where you need the perspective of someone who is another gender, another background. Of course, we haven't even touched into the other intersectionalities within, when we talk about women, because we represent women of all ages, all backgrounds, all religions, all cultural backgrounds. There are other needs that need to be accommodated for. And that is just very much goes to the heart of having good people policies and understanding who works for you and what their needs are. And dealing with people on an individual basis. That's what we're talking about when we say fairness, inclusion and respect. And that's what we're talking about. It's not giving everyone the same. It's actually giving everyone what they need to be able to succeed. And we're all individuals.
I think that particular concept can be quite challenging for people to wrap their heads around. And I'm not really sure why, but I think it's got something to do with, well, if they get one, I get one. It's like, but they need two. But if they get two, then I want two. Why? You don't need it. And trying to sort of unpack that FOMO or that sort of perspective of the difference between equality and equity and what that actually means and what in practice it looks like.
Yeah, 100%. If I take this back to how I actually explain it to my kids. So I've got 2 very different children. I've got a boy and a girl, and they're 10 and 12 now. And for a long time, I've been explaining to them that you're not going to get the same things and we're not going to parent you in exactly the same way. Not because we're being unfair, but because you don't need the same things. And when you extrapolate that out to your workforce, people don't need the same things. This is why we have professional development plans, and we have training for some people in a particular area, others it might be in a different area. Like the workforce is diverse and people are diverse, and that's the joy of it, right? People are fascinating. They're amazing. Get a group of people together. There's so much diversity there. But if you apply the same blanket approach, you're not going to actually get the best results. So just, it's that when you think about that image of people trying to look over a fence and, and what the difference between equality and equity, actually is. And, equality might be, we'll give everyone a step and everyone gets the same thing. Yet the shorter people still can't see over the fence. The taller people never needed one in the first place. And you've got the same starting point, but no one's able to actually, achieve in that way. And then the next point is we'll actually give people a step that it meets the needs of the height at which they are, and then they can see over the fence, and that's one good thing. But actually what we're trying to get to is, why is the fence there in the first place? And can we remove the fence? Because if we just keep plugging the gaps of the problem rather than removing the problem, we're actually, it's self-perpetuating. So what we're trying to do is, and this is the heart of our culture change focus and the big project that we're driving in this space this year, is let's look at those barriers. What are the walls that need to come down? What are the really challenging issues? And let's just remove them altogether. And if you start looking at it like that, the issues around, toilets and access to, menstrual products and things like that almost fall away, because the ultimate end goal is to get a staff member, employee who actually can achieve the most that they can achieve in your organisation and loves working there and really thrives. Well, take away those little things that shouldn't be a problem in the first place, and guess what? You can see that that's one less of a barrier to that person being able to achieve. And of course, it's good for the business too.
And to anyone who thinks when they're raising something like that it is sooking, or they feel like it's sooking, just bring it up with some, of your NAWIC community or people from that, and get a vibe check. Is it sooking, or is this actually a problem? Because I think you'll find more often than not, it actually is something that probably should be addressed, and there's ways to go about doing that and seeking the support, and it will help you and it will help others. So trying to get out of your own way a little bit and just crowdsourcing, hey, is this weird, or is this am I whinging or whatever? Most of the time you're probably not. There's probably something there. You're just stopping yourself from trying to do something about it.
And if it's a basic need, it's not sooking, but absolutely, use the photo friend. We've got lots of that available in NAWIC. But, is it something you need to be able to do your job? It's not sooking. And regardless of the response or the attitude of the people that you deal with, in many cases you do. It doesn't change because of their attitude or their response to it. They have a poor response to it. That doesn't change that it never was in the first place. It says more about them than it says about you. So less internalizing your needs as a woman and more making sure that you're articulating what they are so that you can get the supports that you need so that you can do your job well.
Yeah. There's also some really serious issues in construction as well. And Louisa raised a few in her episode about considering their personal physical safety for women in ways that male colleagues often don't. It's quite confronting, but I think it's something that our industry can't and shouldn't shy away from. Just want to say quickly here before I play the clip that to let listeners know that the following clip does contain discussions on sexual harassment and assault. And if this is something you're not able to consume at this time, just skip forward a few minutes.
She was asking the group saying like, oh, what do you consider when it comes to safety? And the group was saying like, oh, that I have my high vis. These are all men. I've got my steel caps. If we're going into long grass, I've got gaiters for snakes. And she turned to them and said, well, I consider if I'm going to get raped on this site or not when she's doing remote work.
Yeah, all right. So that is a reality for a lot of women. And I'd like to know from your perspective, do you think women's physical safety in this way is being taken seriously enough at the highest levels of industry and government? And how is NAWIC pushing to make sure there are measurable changes in this space?
So is it taken seriously enough in industry at the moment? No. And I've got to be careful. I'm talking with a very broad brush here. We cover a big industry, and there are some organisations that are doing this very well.
Yes.
There are also equally some organisations that are really not doing anything or actually perpetuating the issues in how they're dealing with or how they're not planning for it. So from a government perspective, the law is there and the protections have been strengthened. So I think from a legal perspective and a policy perspective, I know there's more work happening in this space and there's more work happening with Safe Work Australia, for example, around guidance around this. And we've just participated in a collaborative submission around work health and safety laws to really stamp down on sexual harassment and gender-based violence in sight as well. So there is a lot of advocacy happening, and the strengthening is there. What we need is to bridge that disconnect between women's experiences and how organisations are planning to prevent that happening. So this is not a case of we will deal with it when it happens. It shouldn't happen in the first place. And that's exactly where, Louisa's clip is spot on. That discussion about it, and that's a really useful discussion to be having up front, because that's where you need to be dealing with it, to stamp it out. It's just not acceptable. It shouldn't be happening in the first place. Businesses should be planning for this, and individuals should be trained enough to know what they could be doing in this space as well. I had Louisa on a panel at Melbourne Build recently, and one of the questions that she got was, what can we do to really encourage young women into the sector, and how do we make construction an attractive sector for women? And one of her answers was, stop harassing us. And really it resonated for the audience, but it's absolutely true that the statistics are quite stark. Just to put it into context, the construction sector actually is one of the highest risk industries for sexual harassment and gender-based violence. And frighteningly, women are actually 4 times more likely than men to experience workplace harassment generally. And if you look at the Australian Human Rights Commission figures, more than 40% of women have actually experienced workplace sexual harassment in the last 5 years. But the report released by the New South Wales government, the Women in Construction report, so their survey is a couple of years along now, and that was just released yesterday. And that showed that 70% of the women that they surveyed had experienced discrimination or sexual harassment in the last 12 months. So construction specific, it is, let that sink in, 70% of women. This is not a side issue.
That is so high, but based on the people that I talk to and stories that come to me, it actually feels low, dare I say. And perhaps I'm a bit of a magnet for people feeling like a safe space to share their stories with, and so acknowledging that I might get a disproportionate number of the negative and people looking for support coming to me. But 70% is crazy, like very high. And from my experience, I'm like, I wouldn't be surprised if you told me 95. Do you know what I mean?
It's hugely frightening, right? And that's even more frightening. And what we have to look at is construction's actually one of the worst industries for it. So we sit at both the highest rates of sexual harassment, but also the lowest rates of formal reporting. So that tells us that the environment in which people are operating means they don't feel safe, or don't feel that it's actually useful, that it's going to go anywhere when they report. So it's interesting because across the community, it's about 92% of women who experience sexual assault do not report the incident. So we don't ever know about the vast majority of sexual assault cases across the community itself. And so we know that generally sexual assault is underreported, under-prosecuted and under-convicted. And when you actually sort of extrapolate that out to the construction sector, we are a microcosm of what is happening in the society. We are 10% of the workforce in construction, the entire Australian workforce. It is a big sector that we're talking about. There is a real need to focus on strengthening accountability mechanisms and training, and actually, as we were talking about before, getting people to understand how to deal with someone who's gone through this. How do you have an effective conversation an effective support mechanism. And that may not just be, oh, well, what would you like to do?
Yes.
That may be, actually, thank you for reporting that. These are the options. This is what I now need to do from there. And offering support, and, the way in which you deal with someone when they first tell you something, has a massive impact on what happens to them there, and also on the full extent of the health impact and the mental health impact of that incident that's just happened. So I think this is a real area of focus of actually building people's capabilities, and construction needs to lift its game. And we can't do that if we are hiding behind, but we don't have many reported statistics, so it's not very high in our company. It's a bit like when people say, we don't have any modern slavery in our supply chain, it's all good. Well, actually, that's a huge red flag, because you can't be 100% sure.
Yes.
With the underreporting of sexual harassment, if you're not hearing about it, that is actually a red flag. If you think that there is nothing happening in your business, if you're a large business, maybe if you're smaller, it proportionately will be less risk. But if you're just based on those statistics, if you extrapolate that to the number of workers you've got and sort of cut it back for construction, there is a huge risk here. And so creating a safe space for and that psychological safety around reporting, and people having trust and confidence in the process, knowing what is going to happen, and trusting that it's actually going to have an outcome, that it's not going to be a waste of time, or worse, you're not actually going to see the behaviour get worse. Our microaggressions research showed when people reported microaggressions, some of which were actually sexual harassment, 63% of people saw no change. What was even worse than that is 9% of women saw the behaviour get worse.
Yep.
So there is a fundamental risk here for women in raising it. Not only that, firstly, they may not be believed, or it may be downplayed, or nothing might happen, but actually they might be putting themselves at more risk by raising it in the first place. That is what we need to focus on, and that is where businesses need to step up and realise that actually we need accountability, and we really need to make strides in this. And we've got the law and we've got the policy there to support it. So it's not that's being strengthened, but it is there, and it is there in different ways. It's just being made more explicit, but businesses cannot be not doing anything about this. They need to have a strategy, and they have an accountability. They have an obligation to their workers.
It's such an interesting point you raised about businesses who perhaps can look at themselves and go, oh, no, we don't have that problem in our organisation, and then overlaying just the data onto that and thinking, really? Or do you just not know about it? Or have you not created a culture that enables the reporting of those things, or some other combination thereof? Like, it sounds incredible what you're claiming to have got or created or whatever it might be, but really? Like, are you sure? If you are, that's awesome. Let's write a book and publish that.
I mean, it shows the importance of data too, doesn't it? Because unless you're collecting data, you don't know what your baseline is, and therefore you don't know if what you're doing is actually improving anything. But if we didn't have this research data, which we refer to all the time, and the research that just come out yesterday in New South Wales, they actually found that from overall, in terms of any type of discriminatory behaviour, including sexual harassment, when people reported it in that survey, 85% of men were happy with what happened after how it was reported and what actually happened from then. Only 47% of women actually were happy with the process. So there's this big disconnect between the experiences. It's a very gendered experience in terms of your reporting and what actually happens after that. And that goes back to, it all goes back to culture. It all goes back to, what are the minimum standards that we are accepting in our business? What is the behaviour that we are walking past and therefore we are encouraging? How are we actually going to make our workplace fair, inclusive and respectful for everybody? That's good for the individuals, but if we have to put our business lens on it, that is good for the business. That is actually the best thing for, even just financially, your bottom line. It's so crazy that it's not being seen as the business imperative that it should be.
Yeah, I agree with that. I like to end the episode by just opening up the floor to say, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you would like to use the NAWIC Couch and mics to address today?
Yeah, I'd love to talk about our big culture change project. So this year we were very fortunate and very excited to win one of the federal government's $5 million Building Women's Careers grants. Major stuff. So it's taking NAWIC into the next stratosphere in terms of our initiatives and our education, our resources. So over the next 3 years, between 2025 and 2028, we are developing up and delivering 4 programs within that. It's called Allyship in Action. It's about transforming culture to both attract and retain women, because we know, as we've been speaking about, unless you've got the culture right, you're not going to get women coming into and staying in the sector. And we've got 4 elements within it, so 4 programs within the project. The first one is an allyship project, a male allyship program, and it's developing up. We've got an existing program which is really strong, so we're going to be rolling that out nationally and building a network around that so that we are providing as much support to men to call them in. You know, this is very much a message to all the men who are listening. Come, if you're not a member of NAWIC, you should be. Come and join us. Come and work with us on this. We recognise that everyone's at different levels of understanding, different stages on their learning journey. That's okay. Come and start. And the best place to start, you know, is here and now. The next program within that is a site-based allyship program. So again, focusing on male allyship, but we are actually going to site and talking to men and facilitating workshops to understand the male psyche on site and to build a program that is specific for men and that meets their needs in a way that's going to bring them in. So that's globally leading. There's nothing I'm aware of that exists like that at the moment, and construction sites are challenging environments. So this is why it is just so needed. The third program within the project is a sponsorship program. So we're taking men, teaching them how to be active sponsors, how that differs from mentorship or coaching or other forms of support, and actually giving them the tools to be good sponsors, and then pairing them with a group of 4 to 6 women to actually sponsor and to really hone their skills with. Of course, huge benefits for the women, because the opportunity there is that you could be sponsored by someone either within your company, if that's what the company decides to do or you decide to do, or actually across the sector. So it's a sponsorship program that is sector-wide, that gives people in small business, about 98% of our sector, the opportunity where they might not otherwise have to be actively and formally sponsored by someone else in the sector. And that also creates pathways, breaks down that who you know and hiring from people in your network type thing, and you get to build your network as a woman in that program. And then the fourth and final program within that is a cultural ambassadors program. And it draws together a lot of what I've spoken about today. It's about creating this community, a collaboration of upstanders. So teaching people to be confident and competent to be able to call out poor behaviour when they see it every day on the ground where it's lived, and also to really promote and support good behaviours. So it's based off the fundamental belief that everybody can be a leader when it comes to culture, that everybody has a role to play in developing and supporting a positive culture. And whilst we need leaders to be leading it, we also, culture is owned by everyone, from the leadership down, the early levels in and everywhere in between. So it's creating that shared sense of responsibility and also a network around that. So, cultural ambassadors can then actually draw from each other and know that they've got support, they've got the autonomy and the authority to be able to carry out that function. So big, exciting project. We are, it's running for 3 years, as I mentioned, and we're working with industry partners, ADCO, CPB contractors, the Australian Workers Union, and Holmes Glen Institute, which is a TAFE based in Victoria. So we are covering the industry, we're covering early entrance in. We've got incredible insights of the AWU who work across sectors, so not just construction, which brings, so much value from looking at what other sectors are doing.
There's value in diversity.
There's value in diversity.
Sorry, what do you mean?
Go figure, right? So bringing in those views of what has worked well in other industries that are, quite frankly, much further along this space than construction. We are a little bit dinosaurs in this area, but we're going to move that forward. So really excited about this project, and there'll be lots of opportunities for everyone in the sector to get involved. We're developing up the programs at the moment, and we'll be piloting them. We'll be testing their impact, because we don't want to put out anything that isn't impactful and isn't going to have the intended outcomes that we want. And once it's all ready to go, it will be rolled out to the whole sector and available to everybody to pick up and support us with driving that culture change. So super excited.
Yeah, you sound excited about it, and I know NAWIC's excited about it more broadly as well amongst the community, and what we can potentially do with this program and what it will enable for the industry more generally. I think it's interesting when the idea of male allyship comes up and what that actually means and what's involved in it. And I think you've articulated it so well in terms of there's 4 distinct lanes and this is what we mean by each one, and here are some things around that, because no one is saying that I know men do better, full stop. Like, I don't think I've ever heard that, but it is a bit of we need to uplift as an industry. We can acknowledge that this is an area where we can help. We would like to help you. And here's a program of how we can bring everyone along on the journey and put in some of those steps while we're working on getting rid of the fence.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, because our program is focused on calling men in.
Yep.
And I think when you look at how equity, diversity, inclusion is practiced, that's not always the focus. Sometimes it is very much the message of men do better. And I appreciate that, and it can be frustrating, and being in this field, it can be tiring, and I appreciate that. But we're not actually going to be able to implement the change and really move things forward unless we have men working with us. As I said earlier, these are not women's issues to solve. They are industry issues to solve, and that needs everybody's brain, and it certainly needs the almost 88% majority of the sector, right? We can't work in a bubble, so we need to be working with men. And what excites me is we've got so many amazing men in our network who are strong allies, who are continuing to build that and really bring other men along on the journey, and making sure that other men feel that this is a place for them. NAWIC is an organisation that you can come into and work and have a real impact, and that more than that, we need you, and we're inviting you, and we're really looking forward to working with you and creating the change that we need to see. The project is ambitious. It's huge. What we've crammed into 3 years is huge. My team will tell you that. I'm recruiting the project team. But, my vision with this project is really as a fundamental starting point to drive that cultural change. There will be lots of resources and training and so on available that will continue to build after the project's finished as well. So it is intended to be, something that lives in perpetuity. But it's a starting point. It's not going to solve everything overnight. We wish we could, but it is very much a starting point. And I think I'm really grateful to the federal government for recognising that this is a journey, and for developing up such a really inclusive opportunity to get expertise like NAWIC's into that space to really drive this change, and committing considerable funds to do that. And I think it's a really good way that they've done it. Also bringing industry together with nonprofits who specialise in particular areas, with unions, with government. We all need to work together, and this is not an us and them. It's an our problem, and we own the solution, and we are the solution.
Yeah, it's and it's an ambitious project with a lot of things that we're trying to achieve out of it. And even if we don't achieve every single one of those things to the plan, there's going to be a lot of lessons and a lot of data that come out of that can be then reused and practically applied back into the industry one way or the other.
Yes, and we have actually built into how we're running the project that learning opportunity, that tweaking as we go, that we might have in mind something that works, but actually until we're trialling that out. We don't know.
Yep.
So it's very much informed by the people that we're working with, and we've got such a great base of people in our project partners as a starting point to get those insights and really kick it off on a really strong foot.
Exciting. I can't wait to see how it grows the next few years. Normally I end the episodes with, why did you agree to come on NAWIC Couch today? Because I find it really interesting, people's answers for that. If you've watched the ends of all the episodes, it really varies from, well, Rachael bullied me, to I love talking on a microphone, to like I thought I had something important to say kind of thing, and in between. But I feel like it's probably quite obvious why you agreed to come on NAWIC Couch today, being CEO. So
I'm your biggest fan, right?
So now I'm blushing. So I'd like to ask you instead, what has surprised you about getting to know the NAWIC community more broadly? I mean, you've been CEO for about a year.
Yeah,
now?
just under, coming up on the 18th of November will be a year.
How is that? What has surprised you?
What surprised me? I'm not sure if it surprised me, but just the sheer diversity within our membership, it has excited me. Maybe, less surprised me, but actually it energizes me greatly. I think I knew a lot of the challenges the industry was facing when I came into this role. It's not my first rodeo in the construction space. I think it's just opened my eyes traveling the country and visiting all of our chapters, our local chapters, and also seeing the state of construction across. I've had the opportunity with my family to, as we relocated to the East Coast for this role, to actually travel through all of the jurisdictions that we operate in, and to see the heart and soul of construction in those communities. And, construction is the heart and soul. The built environment sector is the heart and soul of the community in all different senses. So connecting with that, getting, I guess, an updated view of where we're at in 2024, 25, since I've come back from overseas, has been really, really valuable. I think it's such a privilege to be in a purpose-driven organisation that has, such a big role to play in driving forward, where we go as a nation. And that might sound really big, but we operate around the whole country, and we effectively are grassroots-led, volunteer-led organisation. There aren't many nonprofits that can actually say, we are companies registered with ASIC, but actually we have 400 volunteers that work under our banner doing the work we do. I can't. And when I speak to other nonprofit leaders and I say, we've got almost 400 volunteers, and they look at me, starry-eyed. Yeah. Yes. So that just shows just how strong the movement is, and just how much both talent but passion we have in construction to make it the best place it can be. There's some great jobs. It's a fantastic sector. Let's make it, even better, and let's make sure that we're drawing from the wealth of skills and experience that we have around the country. So I think I might have got a little bit away from what surprised me, because it hasn't surprised me, but in a way it kind of has. I think it surprised me in the best possible way, that it's been even more energizing to meet all of our members and our chapter volunteers than I, had anticipated. So
being such a big organisation with all of those positive things you mentioned about the number of volunteers, the spread we have, the sectors that we work into, has it been challenging for you to try and reconcile all of that in your brain and work out how all of that fits in with the strategic plan and these things and chapters' different priorities and all of that kind of stuff? What has that experience been like?
Look, honestly, it's been a wild ride, right? We have been operating for 30 years, and I'm the inaugural CEO.
Yep.
So this has been very much an opportunity and a learning curve for the organisation in looking at where we are, where we want to go, and therefore what is the structure and the governance and the processes we need to actually get there. So I have spent a lot of time this year. I mean, we've done, as you know, massive change, right? So we set our organisational strategy. We've run that massive big grant project and have commenced kickoff and getting the team up for that. And we have restructured to meet the needs to be able to deliver our organisational strategy. So we have a new sort of new team members, new skills and expertise that are working at a national level with all of our volunteers at the local level.
So different processes that we've
We've reset our governance. So all exciting stuff. And but yes, it's been challenging because it's sometimes because there's so much we want to do and there's so much potential. It can feel a little bit like everything everywhere all at once. But the flip side of that is look at where we are now, and I'm so energised going into 2026 about where we are as an organisation, the framework that we've got, the skills and the expertise that we've got on board, and just how much we're able to really drive change and shift the dial for women moving forward.
I fear I am turning this into a couch episode, but one more question for you about you, if you'll allow me.
Sure.
Is how do you stay? It's not on the notes. This is a Rachael tangent that everyone on this couch experiences. You're welcome. How do you stay motivated and in the direction that you want to push the organisation towards, with noise or resistance that might come, whether from within the community, outside the community, media, yourself? I don't know. Like, how do you stay focused on where you're heading?
No resistance in construction, right? No. That's a really good question. I think just ultimately for me, I'm a glass half full person, and I see the incredible opportunity that we have. And I knew taking on this role with NAWIC was going to be big, but I'm not sure if I anticipated how big, but definitely big. But I'm energised by the opportunity that we actually have. Like, we can really change some stuff up. And that's, that's yet to come. We really are we're in the start of our org strategy for the next couple of years, and it's only going to ramp up from here.
Is that a spoiler?
There's lots to come. Watch this space. And I think I'm just so passionate about, I love this industry. We just get stuff done. So there's so much opportunity. I'm just excited at the talent we've got, the inspiration. I mean, my workday is being surrounded with people like yourself, Rach. So, that energises me, and the passion that we've got within our membership energises me. And also the commitment, whenever I speak to businesses and leaders, and we ran an event in August where we had 30 CEOs descending on Melbourne for an event in our 30th year, and I facilitated a day of discussion with senior leaders, and just the intention is there, and there's not one business or one leader I talk to who doesn't see where we're going, understand our organisational strategy, and want to get on board with that. And to me, that's hugely energising. I know that we're doing the right thing. We're going in the right direction. There are lots of challenges along the way, and sometimes you sort of get knocked down and you have to get back up. But ultimately, I know what we can build together, and that, I think, is the thing that energises me the most. And a bit more sleep would be good, but other than that, it's exciting. It really is.
I really could keep going, but I won't, because we have somewhere to be soon. Was there anything else at all that you wanted to talk about, ask about, bring up while we're here today?
I think just, given this will be published after it's announced formally, I'm just so thrilled that you are going to be our president of the South Australian chapter, moving forward. And I'm, just really excited about what's to come, and just, I guess, want to do a call out to anyone who's listening who both is a member and maybe a member of NAWIC for a long time, or you may be new, or you may be considering whether this is the place for you, that, it's definitely the place for you. And we really welcome you, and we look forward to meeting you and bringing you in on the great work we're doing and the journey that we're on. And let's change some stuff up, Rach.
Yep, let's do it. I'm excited. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're done. This conversation was recorded and produced on Kaurna land. We pay our respects to the traditional owners of this land and waterways, as well as the elders, past, present, and emerging. We extend this respect to all Indigenous peoples of this continent and its adjacent lands, recognising their cultures as the oldest continuous living cultures in human history. We recognise the deep spiritual connections and relationship Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have with community, as well as the lands, oceans, waterways, air and sky. We acknowledge the land we live, work and play on always was and always will be Aboriginal land.